In this video, you will learn about the 10 most dangerous products you should never buy in the US if you want to avoid harming your health or even putting your life at risk. We will examine real cases of severe poisonings, chronic illnesses, and hidden dangers that may be lurking in everyday products found on American store shelves. These items may seem harmless, but research proves otherwise. Many contain toxic substances, harmful bacteria, heavy metals, and carcinogens that can lead to cancer, liver and kidney damage, nervous system disorders, and cardiovascular diseases. This video will present shocking facts backed by scientific research, along with real-life cases from American doctors. We will start with the less obvious risks and then move on to the most fatal ones, those that can cause irreversible harm to the body and even result in death. You will also receive practical advice on how to recognize potentially dangerous products, choose safer alternatives, and spot warning signs to avoid falling victim to hidden food hazards. Watch until the end to learn how to protect yourself and your family from products that could cost you your life. And if you have had a negative experience with questionable products in the US, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss how to avoid these dangers and help protect each other. This video is going to be incredibly informative and helpful. If you want to take control of your health like a pro, give it a like, and let's get started. Tip 10. If you are in the US, never buy imported cheese. When you pick up a beautifully packaged imported cheese from the store shelf, its rich aroma and elegant appearance may deceive you, hiding a potential health risk. A product meant to bring pleasure can become a source of serious illness if its origin and quality are not properly controlled. This is especially true for cheeses from countries where sanitation standards are far from ideal, and production and transportation do not meet strict safety regulations. A study by the National Institute of Food Safety in the US found that about 12% of imported cheeses from unverified sources contain traces of Listeria monocytogenes, the bacteria responsible for listeriosis. This dangerous infection can cause severe nervous system damage, lead to sepsis, and in extreme cases, result in death. Pregnant women are particularly vulnerable. The risk of miscarriage due to Listeria infection is 20 times higher compared to the general population. Others at high risk include elderly individuals, transplant patients, and people with cancer or diabetes, whose weakened immune systems make them more susceptible to the bacteria. The American Association of Epidemiologists reports even more alarming data. In the past 5 years, over 1,600 cases of listeriosis have been recorded in the US, with about 260 resulting in death. In 1 out of 3 cases, the source of infection was cheese produced outside the country. One of the most serious cases investigated by specialists at a Los Angeles medical center involved a previously healthy young man who fell critically ill after consuming soft Mexican cheese. The infection led to severe brain inflammation, and only emergency hospitalization saved his life. In many developed countries such as Germany, Switzerland, and Canada, imported cheeses from high-risk areas undergo rigorous multi-level testing for bacteria and other pathogens. If they fail safety standards, they are simply banned from sale. In contrast, the US has more lenient regulations, allowing cheeses that have not undergone full safety testing to reach store shelves. To protect yourself and your family, always check the labeling carefully. The word pasteurized indicates that the milk used to make the cheese has undergone heat treatment, reducing the risk of contamination. However, many traditional varieties, such as French Roquefort or Mexican queso fresco, are made from raw milk and carry hidden dangers. It is safer to choose products from countries with strict sanitation regulations or opt for American brands with strong reputations. Also, pay attention to storage conditions. If cheese is displayed in an open refrigerator without protective packaging, bacteria may have already contaminated it. What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tip 9. If you are in the US, never buy imported spices. Spices are the heart of any kitchen, bringing rich aromas and deep flavors to every dish. However, behind these exotic seasonings, a serious health risk may be lurking. In recent years, multiple studies conducted by American food safety organizations have revealed a troubling pattern. Imported spices from India and Vietnam are frequently contaminated with toxic substances and harmful bacteria. One of the most dangerous contaminants is lead. In 2021, an independent study conducted by researchers at Johns Hopkins University found that 40% of analyzed imported spice samples contained lead levels exceeding safe limits by several times. Lead is not just a harmful metal. It is a powerful neurotoxin that accumulates in the body and damages the nervous system. Even small amounts consumed over time can cause chronic fatigue, cognitive decline, memory loss, and cardiovascular problems. Children are especially vulnerable. Low levels of lead exposure in children can result in irreversible brain damage, lower IQ, and developmental delays. But heavy metals are not the only concern. A 2020 study from one of the leading independent laboratories in the US found that 12% of all tested spices from India and Vietnam were contaminated with salmonella. This bacteria causes severe food poisoning, leading to high fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and dehydration. Each year, approximately 1.35 million Americans contract salmonella, with more than 26,000 requiring hospitalization and around 420 deaths reported. The most at-risk groups include children, the elderly, and those with weakened immune systems. American doctors frequently encounter the consequences of consuming contaminated spices. In 2019, 36-year-old Lisa Walker was admitted to a New York hospital with severe food poisoning. Her symptoms included persistent vomiting, extreme weakness, and a high fever. Blood tests revealed elevated lead levels, while intestinal tests confirmed salmonella infection. The source of her illness was traced back to her love for Asian cuisine. She had been buying cheap, unbranded spices from a small store. The toxic effects built up over several months, eventually leading to acute poisoning. In developed countries such as Canada, Germany, and Japan, spice imports undergo strict testing. Every batch is screened for heavy metals and bacterial contamination. The US also has safety checks in place, but due to the sheer volume of imports, not every container of spices can be tested, allowing contaminated products to reach store shelves. To protect yourself and your family, it is important to be mindful when choosing spices. The best option is to buy from trusted suppliers, prioritizing American or European brands that adhere to strict quality standards. Pay close attention to packaging. Certified products should include details about the manufacturer and lab testing. If possible, opt for whole spices, such as whole peppercorns or coriander seeds, and grind them yourself to reduce the risk of contamination. How do you feel about this information? Leave a comment. Tip 8. If you're in the US, never buy imported nuts and dried fruits. At first glance, nuts and dried fruits seem like the perfect choice for a healthy snack. They are packed with nutrients, rich in vitamins, high in fiber, and full of healthy fats. However, not everything is as safe as it appears. If you don't pay attention to where these products come from, you might unknowingly expose yourself to an invisible yet deadly threat: aflatoxins. Aflatoxins are toxic compounds produced by mold fungi, Aspergillus flavus and Aspergillus parasiticus. They commonly affect nuts, figs, raisins, apricots, and dates, especially when stored in warm and humid conditions. The most alarming fact about aflatoxins is their strong carcinogenic effect. They have been linked to liver cancer. Research from the American Cancer Institute confirms that long-term consumption of foods containing aflatoxins increases the risk of liver cancer by 37%. The highest contamination levels have been recorded in nuts and dried fruits imported into the US from Turkey and Iran. A study conducted by the University of Minnesota found that around 18% of nut samples from these countries contained excessive levels of aflatoxins, with some cases exceeding the legal safety limits by 200 times. This means that even a small handful of these nuts could cause significant harm to your health. One of the greatest dangers of aflatoxins is that they are undetectable by taste, smell, or appearance. You could eat a seemingly perfect almond or date without realizing that it is laced with poison. Over time, day by day, these toxins accumulate in the body, damaging liver cells, weakening the immune system, and increasing the likelihood of cancer. Symptoms of chronic aflatoxin poisoning include persistent fatigue, stomach pain, yellowing of the skin, and sudden weight loss. American doctors have already encountered cases of severe poisoning caused by contaminated dried fruits. One such case was reported in a Texas hospital where a 46-year-old man was admitted with symptoms of acute poisoning, vomiting, dizziness, and liver dysfunction. It was later discovered that he had been regularly purchasing dried dates from a small store that sold unregulated products. Tests revealed a high concentration of aflatoxins in his blood. His treatment took several months, and even after recovery, doctors warned him about an increased risk of liver cancer in the future. Many European countries, including Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, enforce strict regulations on aflatoxin levels in food products. Imported nuts and dried fruits undergo thorough testing, and if contamination exceeds legal safety limits, the products are destroyed. In the US, the regulations are less stringent, allowing potentially unsafe products to reach store shelves without proper inspection. To protect yourself and your family, always check the origin of the nuts and dried fruits you buy. Choose products from countries with high food safety standards, such as the US, Canada, Australia, or European nations. Pay attention to packaging. Quality nuts and dried fruits should be sealed in airtight bags with clear labeling confirming they have passed safety inspections. If possible, soak nuts before eating, as this can help reduce potential contaminants. Share your thoughts on this in the comments. Tip 7. If you are in the US, never buy imported canned foods. Canned goods may seem like a safe and convenient option, especially for quick meals or emergency stockpiles. However, those who grab imported canned products off store shelves without thinking risk getting more than just food in a can. They might be consuming a dangerous cocktail of harmful chemicals. This is particularly true for canned goods from China and Thailand, where sanitation standards are significantly lower than in the US and Europe. A study by Johns Hopkins University found that up to 22% of canned products from China and about 17% from Thailand contained elevated levels of heavy metals such as lead, mercury, and cadmium. These toxic elements accumulate in the body over time, damaging the kidneys, liver, and nervous system. Long-term lead exposure, for example, can cause cognitive impairment, lower intelligence levels in children, and even infertility in adults. Cheap canned fish poses an even greater risk, especially tuna, mackerel, and sardines, which are often sourced from the polluted waters of Southeast Asia. Research from the Harvard School of Public Health found that 38% of canned tuna samples from China contained mercury levels exceeding legal safety limits. Regular consumption of such fish can lead to central nervous system damage by chronic fatigue, headaches, and even neurological disorders. Heavy metals are not the only concern. Many canned products from these countries contain dangerous food additives that are banned in developed nations. A study by Princeton University revealed that 14% of canned vegetables from China contain sulfur dioxide, a preservative known to cause allergic reactions, asthma, and respiratory damage. American doctors have already encountered severe poisoning cases linked to contaminated canned foods. One such case involved a 55-year-old man from San Francisco who was admitted to the hospital with persistent weakness, muscle spasms, and loss of coordination. Tests revealed dangerously high mercury levels in his blood. It turned out that he had been regularly eating low-cost canned tuna from China. His recovery took over a year, and even after treatment, the effects of mercury poisoning remained. In countries like Germany, Switzerland, and Canada, imported canned foods undergo multi-level inspections. If heavy metals or banned preservatives are detected, the products are immediately destroyed. In the US, however, regulations are more lenient, allowing unsafe products to slip onto store shelves. To protect yourself and your family, choose canned foods from countries with strict safety standards. The best options come from the US, Canada, or European nations, where quality control is far more rigorous. Always check the ingredient list on the packaging. If it contains suspicious preservatives or artificial flavor enhancers, it's best to avoid it. And never prioritize a low price over your health. What's your take on this? Let's discuss in the comments. Tip 6. If you are in the US, never buy imported dairy products. Milk is often seen as a symbol of purity and health. A glass of chilled milk brings back memories of childhood, care, and essential nutrients for the body. However, if this product is imported from countries with poor sanitation standards, it may carry hidden dangers that many consumers don't consider. India and Pakistan are among the world's largest dairy producers, but their quality standards fall far below ideal. A study conducted by the University of California found that up to 28% of imported milk and dairy products from these countries contain traces of antibiotics used to treat cows. The uncontrolled use of tetracycline and streptomycin in livestock farming leads to these substances ending up in milk and, eventually, in the human body. Regular consumption of such products can cause antibiotic resistance, a condition in which bacteria become unresponsive to treatment, making even common infections potentially life-threatening. But antibiotics are not the only concern. In South Asian countries, the quality of cattle feed, living conditions, and hygiene standards are often poor. Research from the U.S. Institute of Food Safety found that up to 19% of tested imported dairy products contained E. coli and salmonella, bacteria that can cause severe food poisoning, vomiting, diarrhea, and in extreme cases, sepsis. Children, the elderly, and pregnant women are especially vulnerable, as these infections can lead to serious complications. American doctors have repeatedly seen the consequences of consuming contaminated dairy products. One such case occurred at a clinic in Miami, where a 36-year-old woman was admitted with severe abdominal pain, high fever, and dehydration. Tests confirmed a salmonella infection, and the unexpected source was soft cheese she had purchased from an Asian grocery store. She spent 2 weeks in the hospital, and the effects of the poisoning impacted her health for a long time. In developed countries such as Germany, Canada, and Australia, dairy imports are strictly regulated, and every product undergoes multi-level testing. In the US, however, oversight is weaker, and contaminated products often make their way onto store shelves without adequate screening. To minimize risk, it's crucial to choose dairy products only from trusted manufacturers with strong reputations. American, Canadian, and European brands adhere to strict safety standards, significantly reducing the likelihood of contamination. Pay close attention to labeling. If there is no mention of pasteurization on the packaging, the product is likely unsafe. What do you say about this? Looking forward to your comments. Tip 5. If you are in the US, never buy imported meat products. A juicy, perfectly grilled piece of meat may look delicious, but if its origin is unclear, it could be hiding a serious health risk. Imported meat products from countries with low-quality control standards such as Brazil and China can cause severe health problems that develop unnoticed but have devastating consequences. A study by the University of North Carolina found that up to 34% of imported meat samples from Brazil and over 29% from China contain traces of antibiotics used in livestock farming. The problem is that these drugs don't just kill bacteria, they make them resistant to treatment. People who regularly consume meat with antibiotic residues gradually lose the ability to fight even common infections. As a result, something as simple as a sore throat or pneumonia could turn into a life-threatening illness that no standard medication can treat. But antibiotics aren't the only concern. A study by Princeton University revealed that around 21% of imported beef and pork samples from these countries contain traces of growth hormones, which are banned in developed nations. These substances artificially accelerate weight gain in animals, but in humans, they can cause hormonal imbalances, increase the risk of cancer, and disrupt the endocrine system. This is particularly dangerous for children and teenagers, whose bodies are more sensitive to hormonal changes. Another serious risk comes from pathogenic bacteria. Research from the University of Georgia found that up to 18% of imported chicken samples from China were contaminated with salmonella and E. coli. These infections can cause severe food poisoning, digestive disorders, and in extreme cases, serious kidney and liver damage. American doctors have already witnessed the consequences of consuming low-quality imported meat. In a medical center in Chicago, a 42-year-old man was hospitalized after suffering from a severe E. coli infection. He had been regularly buying cheap frozen meat products from an Asian supermarket. After a serious case of bacterial poisoning, he spent 3 weeks in the hospital, suffering from extreme dehydration and kidney damage. Tests confirmed that the infection was caused by contaminated chicken imported from China. In developed countries such as Germany, the United Kingdom, and Canada, meat products are strictly monitored at every stage, from production to retail. If meat is found to contain hormones, antibiotics, or harmful bacteria, it is immediately removed from the market. In the US, however, regulations are not always as strict, allowing many batches of imported meat to reach store shelves without thorough inspection. To stay safe, it is essential to buy meat from local farms or trusted producers. Farmers in the US, Canada, and European countries follow strict animal farming standards and avoid using harmful substances. When choosing meat, always check the labels. Words like antibiotic-free, hormone-free, and pathogen-tested indicate that the product meets high safety standards. Do you agree or disagree? Let's talk about it in the comments. Tip 4. If you are in the US, never buy imported fruits and vegetables. Bright, juicy fruits and fresh vegetables on store shelves look so tempting that they seem like they were just picked from the farm. However, behind their flawless appearance, a hidden danger could be lurking. Imported fruits and vegetables from Mexico and China often contain pesticide residues, with levels exceeding safe limits by several times. Instead of being a source of essential vitamins, these products can lead to chronic diseases that develop unnoticed but have devastating effects on health. A study by the University of California found that up to 32% of fruit and vegetable samples imported from Mexico contained pesticides that are banned in the US. Among them was chlorpyrifos, a chemical known to cause neurological disorders, particularly in children. The situation in China was even worse. Over 41% of tested samples contained traces of carbendazim, a pesticide linked to infertility and liver cancer. The long-term exposure to these toxic substances slowly but inevitably harms the body. Pesticides accumulate in the system, leading to liver damage, hormonal imbalances, neurological disorders, and even cancer. Research from the Harvard School of Public Health found that people who regularly consume foods with high pesticide levels have a 43% higher risk of developing Parkinson's disease compared to those who eat organic products. The biggest danger is that pesticides cannot be detected without laboratory testing. They do not alter the taste, color, or smell of food, so consumers have no way of knowing they are eating contaminated produce. This is especially concerning for crops like strawberries, grapes, apples, peppers, and spinach. These fruits and vegetables absorb chemicals like a sponge, making it impossible to wash them off with just water. American doctors have already seen the consequences of consuming such products. One case occurred at a clinic in Houston, where a 29-year-old woman complained of persistent fatigue, dizziness, and nausea. Blood tests revealed high levels of toxins commonly found in pesticides. It turned out that for several months, she had been eating imported Mexican peppers daily, unaware that they contained dangerous chemical residues. Her symptoms only disappeared after she completely eliminated non-organic vegetables from her diet and underwent a long detoxification process. In developed countries such as Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, pesticide levels in food are strictly regulated. If vegetables or fruits exceed safety limits, they are immediately removed from sale, and suppliers face heavy fines. In the US, regulations are more lenient, allowing dishonest importers to continue bringing in potentially dangerous produce. To minimize risk, it is best to choose locally grown or organic fruits and vegetables, which undergo stricter inspections. Always wash your produce thoroughly, but remember, water only removes surface residues, while many pesticides penetrate deep into the plant's tissues. Write your thoughts on this. Tip 3. If you're in the US, never buy imported seafood. Juicy shrimp, tender fish fillets, and flavorful squid may seem like the perfect choice for a healthy diet. However, if the packaging says the seafood comes from Vietnam or Thailand, you might want to think twice before adding it to your cart. Beneath the appealing appearance, these products can contain a dangerous cocktail of antibiotics, heavy metals, and harmful bacteria that pose a serious risk to your health. A study by the Harvard Center for Food Safety found that over 42% of seafood imported from Vietnam contain traces of banned antibiotics, including ciprofloxacin and sulfamethoxazole. These drugs are widely used in fish farms and end up in the human body, increasing the risk of antibiotic resistance. This means that if you get sick, standard antibiotics may no longer work, turning even a common bacterial infection into a life-threatening condition. But antibiotics aren't the only concern. Seafood from these countries is often farmed in polluted waters containing mercury, cadmium, and lead. A study by the University of North Carolina found that about 27% of fish fillet samples from Thailand contained mercury levels exceeding legal safety limits. Long-term consumption of such seafood can damage the nervous system, reduce cognitive function, cause chronic fatigue, and even contribute to neurological disorders like Alzheimer's disease. The situation with harmful bacteria is just as alarming. A report from the American Association of Epidemiology stated that up to 33% of frozen shrimp from Vietnam tested positive for E. coli and Vibrio, a bacterium that causes cholera. This infection can lead to severe dehydration, muscle cramps, and even death, particularly in people with weakened immune systems. American doctors have already dealt with severe cases of seafood poisoning. In one New York hospital, a 48-year-old man was admitted with a life-threatening bacterial infection after regularly buying frozen seafood from an Asian supermarket. Just hours after eating a meal made with imported shrimp, he experienced intense vomiting, sharp stomach pain, and lost consciousness. Tests confirmed a severe bacterial infection caused by contaminated fish. His treatment lasted 4 weeks, and even after recovery, he continued to suffer from digestive issues. Countries like Canada, Sweden, and Germany enforce strict regulations on imported seafood at every stage of distribution. If a product is found to contain excessive toxins or antibiotics, it is immediately destroyed, and suppliers face hefty fines. In the US, regulations are far weaker, allowing thousands of tons of potentially dangerous seafood to reach store shelves every year. To protect yourself and your family, it is best to choose seafood caught in the cold waters of North America or Europe, where pollution levels are significantly lower. Pay close attention to labels. Products with MSC, Marine Stewardship Council, or BAP, Best Aquaculture Practices, certifications undergo strict safety testing and are safer to consume. If possible, opt for fresh seafood instead of frozen varieties, as the latter is often treated with chemicals to extend shelf life. How do these facts sound to you? Waiting for your comments. Tip 2. If you are in the US, never buy imported rice, especially from India or China. Fragrant, fluffy rice seems like a harmless and familiar food that millions of people eat every day. However, beneath those pearly white grains, a hidden danger may be lurking. Rice imported from India and China often contains high levels of inorganic arsenic, a toxic substance that silently accumulates in the body, turning into a slow-acting poison over time. A study by the University of Southern California found that up to 35% of rice samples imported from China contained arsenic levels 2 to 3 times higher than the legal safety limits. Indian rice showed similar results. A study from the University of Georgia revealed that around 28% of tested samples had dangerously high concentrations of this toxin. Once inside the body, arsenic builds up in the liver, kidneys, lungs, and cardiovascular system, gradually damaging these organs. The consequences can be severe. Long-term consumption of rice with high arsenic levels increases the risk of bladder, lung, and skin cancer. Additionally, the toxin affects the nervous system, leading to chronic fatigue, memory impairment, and loss of coordination. Research from the Harvard School of Public Health found that people who regularly eat rice with high arsenic levels are 43% more likely to develop cardiovascular diseases. This type of rice is especially dangerous for children. In 2021, the American Academy of Pediatrics reported that over 20% of rice-based baby cereals, infant formulas, and rice milk made from Chinese and Indian rice contained arsenic concentrations that could negatively impact brain development and reduce cognitive function. American doctors have already treated serious cases of arsenic poisoning. One such case involved a 52-year-old man in Los Angeles who went to the hospital with severe headaches, stomach pain, and sudden vision problems. Tests revealed dangerously high levels of arsenic in his blood, traced back to his regular consumption of rice from an Asian supermarket. The toxin had been accumulating in his body for years, and only after an extended detoxification process was his arsenic level reduced. However, the damage to his liver and kidneys had already been done. In developed countries such as Canada, Sweden, and Germany, strict regulations prevent rice with high arsenic levels from being sold. Farmers are required to test for toxins before growing crops. Let's discuss this point. What do you think? Tip 1. If you are in the US, never buy imported garlic from China. Garlic is known for its powerful health benefits. It strengthens the immune system, fights inflammation, and even helps lower cholesterol. However, if the garlic in your shopping cart comes from China, it may do more harm than good. Despite its appealing appearance, Chinese garlic is often contaminated with toxic substances and grown under poor sanitary conditions. A study by the University of Minnesota found that up to 31% of Chinese garlic samples contained residues of pesticides banned in the US. Among them, methyl bromide is particularly dangerous, a chemical used to treat soil before planting, but banned in developed countries due to its high toxicity. It accumulates in the garlic, and with regular consumption, it can disrupt thyroid function, cause hormonal imbalances, and damage the nervous system. But pesticides aren't the only concern. Chinese garlic is often grown in polluted water containing heavy metals like lead and cadmium. Research from the University of North Carolina revealed that about 22% of tested Chinese garlic samples contained cadmium, a metal that can accumulate in the body and led to chronic kidney disease, liver damage, and bone deterioration. Long-term exposure to cadmium has also been linked to an increased risk of lung and stomach cancer. Another alarming issue is how Chinese garlic is stored and transported. To keep it looking fresh during long shipments, it is often treated with chlorine solutions. This process not only strips the garlic of its beneficial properties, but also increases the risk of exposure to harmful chemicals that can irritate the digestive tract. American doctors have already seen cases of poisoning linked to contaminated garlic. In a San Francisco clinic, a 46-year-old man developed chronic fatigue, headaches, and digestive issues after regularly consuming cheap Chinese garlic from a local store. Tests revealed high levels of cadmium and methyl bromide in his body. Only after eliminating this garlic from his diet and undergoing a long detox process did his condition begin to improve. In developed countries like Canada, Germany, and Australia, imported vegetables and spices undergo strict testing. If a product contains traces of banned pesticides or heavy metals, it is immediately removed from the market. In the US, regulations are weaker, allowing Chinese garlic to continue reaching store shelves. To protect yourself and your family, it's best to choose locally grown garlic. American, Canadian, or Argentinian garlic is cultivated under stricter environmental standards and undergoes rigorous quality control. Identifying the difference is simple. Locally grown garlic usually has its roots intact, while imported garlic from China typically has the roots removed and a white residue on the surface from chlorine treatment. Paying close attention to the quality of your food is essential for your health, as even something as common as garlic can carry hidden dangers. Write in the comments which fact surprised you the most, and if you've ever encountered low-quality food products. Share your experience to help warn others. Next, I recommend checking out these videos, and don't forget to leave your likes and comments. I'm looking forward to them.